Hi there. Okay, so I wanted to do a quick video this week about Eva Zu Beck and literally just looking at her latest escapades in the Arctic and what might be driving her psychologically / astrologically. And I need to add a few caveats right off the bat. So first of all, I'm not an astrologer and I'm not a psychologist. So these are just my thoughts and just some feelings and observations that I'm picking up. Second of all, this isn't meant to be negative in any way, shape or form. I think Eva is an astonishing human being. I really do. Her feats and what she's achieved over the last few years and beyond is absolutely extraordinary. And, you know, she's proved herself. If she's still looking to prove herself, she doesn't need to keep going. You know, she's, as far as I'm concerned, she's proved herself. So then what is this video? Well, this video is just a look at what might be driving her. Because if anyone's seen her escapades over the last few years, they'll know that she takes on tough challenges. She's a tough cookie. And these challenges are not for everyone, despite, you know, the way she plays it is as though, hey, come on, we all need to chuck ourselves out our comfort zone every now and again and see what we're made of. And that's a cool concept, but not all of us would be capable of doing it to the extent that she has. Not at all. So the latest adventure is really what triggered this. I made a couple of comments on her videos. I noticed quite a few people wanted to jump on people who were going, whoa, what's going on? And say, everyone's full of hate. Anyone who's criticising her is full of hate. And I thought, well, no, things are not always so black and white. Sometimes there are nuances. I certainly didn't see any hate. I saw an awful lot of concerned people going, whoa, what's going on? So I commented as well to that effect because, you know, she is a lone exploring lady. She has no camera crew. A couple of people in the comments, well, I wonder if she's got a camera crew to get those sort of drone shots. No, she does it all herself. It's her and Vilk, her dog. So for me, I made a couple of comments and those comments were based on a bit of concern and a bit of alarm. Now, she has done many things in the past. She's very accomplished, and I know this. I know she's been, for instance, to Antarctica, and I know she's climbed the highest mountain there. I think she says mountains plural. I know she's done all sorts of things. She's been across the US, she's been across, I think, most of South America too, quite possibly, I can't remember. But she's done all sorts of extraordinary adventures. She's done ultramarathons, plural, as far as I'm aware. So then what would my concern possibly be when here she is trekking to the Arctic? It's not even the Antarctic, you know, and here she is in the middle of her journey, about to go to the coldest parts, but towards the end of February, moving into March, when perhaps temperatures might be a bit warmer too. So I'll start with what triggered concerns for me, and then we'll go from there. So firstly then, my concern was, I guess, highlighted or exacerbated by the fact I'd just been watching the trek of a couple called the True Blue Travellers, and I'd watched them do a van conversion. They converted an old Sainsbury's van into something that could take them across the Arctic. John and, I've forgotten her name now, another J, forgotten her name, Jess. John and Jess, I think, and they're such a nice couple. And so I watched them. I watched the van conversion. It just came up in the feed one day and I started watching it. And then I watched them go across the Arctic. Now, as I say, for most people, they have, if you're watching these things on a TV show, for instance, there'll be a camera crew. So there's going to be backup. Now, John and Jess had each other. But what had struck me about their whole trek was just how efficient it was. They loved it. They had a ball. They had a blast. They still had a couple of hairy moments, you know. But the planning was second to none. Jess had been researching while John was doing the driving. Jess was on an app looking at park-ups. So they never had a problem with park-ups. She'd researched the heck out of everything in the background while John was driving. And the research before they went there as well. So it was a seamless kind of thing. Now, viewer comfort comes to mind here. Watching what you're comfortable with. Now, maybe you watch things that chuck you out of your comfort zone in terms of watching. But if you're watching a TV programme, there will always be a camera crew there. Now, if you're watching a lone person travelling, these days on YouTube, it's a whole different story. The level of risk is offset with no backup. There may be a satellite phone. We're not sure. I don't follow her on Patreon, so I don't know what the safety measures were, etc. What I got was a stark contrast because Jess and John had planned this meticulously and it showed, and it was a really good high quality series. So if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend that anyway. And then Eva Zu Beck was like, getting over a breakup, I think I might try and do another trek to get over the breakup. That's a good idea. I think I'll go to the Arctic. And then she said in one of her earlier videos, oh gosh, only got a few days to get everything ready, you know. So it instantly, and a little red flag went off then, just a small one, just because I'd watched this really well planned out, well thought out video where they'd specifically kitted out a van for the Arctic. So obviously the heating controls, the insulation area around the heating, he had a little portable heater thing to unfreeze pipes, you know. They broke down a couple of times, Jess and John, but they were able to get it sorted and get it back on the road, no problem at all. They'd looked into tyres. They knew that, yes, some people recommend studded tyres. Some people recommend just winter, all-terrain type of tyres. I can't even say the word now. But I think they went for the normal winter tyres in the end. I think it sounds like if the roads are going to be a bit more icy, that's when you might want to consider the studs. It worked for them in any case, and they were happy. They got all the kit beforehand and all the rest of it. Now, Eva, obviously she'd been to the Antarctic, so some of the kit was probably easy, just chucking in her Antarctic gear and things like this. But it just struck me that this was quite a hurried trek. So it was a tiny red flag. And when I say viewer comfort comes to mind, bear in mind I'm not a traveller, and the things I like to watch, I don't want to be there biting my nails with anxiety every week, hoping that someone's just going to live and be okay, and watching them undertake quite gruelling trials, you know. I might want to watch gruelling trials like Bear Grylls or something like that, but again, usually there's a camera crew and there's backup. Things can get uncomfortable in some instances, and I'm thinking of the old Top Gear Grand Tour series. There's a latest one at the moment we've just watched, and there was one a little while ago. Jeremy Clarkson, I think he was driving on the ice, probably in the Arctic, I think, and the ice started to crack, and there was just this horribly hairy moment. But whether that was built up a bit for TV effect, you know, to sort of keep viewers hooked, I don't know. However, felt a little bit hairy, but you knew that if something horrendous had happened, at least there's a backup crew in a van somewhere nearby, you know. So with Eva then, this trip didn't feel quite so well planned, and knowing that the Arctic temperatures can suddenly change, suddenly, you know, you can get a horrendous drop in temperature down to maybe minus 35, maybe more, perhaps not so much this time of year, I don't know. And all of that, it just wasn't entirely sure that she, you know, that she'd absolutely planned this out, perhaps as well as it could have been planned. And then in early videos, she wasn't doing very well. She wasn't having a great time. So in one of her videos, she's trying to get, because she's got a rooftop tent on her old Landrover, and she's trying to lift it up and she can't lift it. Now, I don't know if that's just the weight of the gear and the snow and the ice that had just, you know, made it all a little bit tricky there. I don't know if that was the case. However, it didn't seem to bode well that she was having such a tough time trying to lift up the rooftop thing. Oh, it's gone. There we go. So there was that. Then there was a crack emerged on the windscreen, and the windscreen wipers also were not working very well. And apparently you can get winter windscreen wipers and things like this as well. Tiny little things. Oh, and a heater packed up. So, and people were coming up with suggestions as to how she could, you know, get through these things as well. So it's fine. So obviously things are going to go wrong no matter how well you plan something. Things are going to go wrong. Of course they are. I guess it's the level and the speed and the, you know, just tiny alarm bells. When things like your heater packs up, you haven't even got to the coldest part yet, and you're only on your second episode in, you know, how long this is going to take her. A few months, I don't know. Easily a month. So you don't really want your heater to pack up when you're still only in, you know, 0 degrees Celsius. You know, you haven't really got to the cold parts yet. You haven't got to your minus 20 degrees Celsius and things like that. So if your heater's going to pack up, it's going to be a problem. Auxiliary battery went. And people were saying, oh, you shouldn't just be running everything off your battery. You're going to want some other forms of heating and things like this as well. So that, again, there's just this sense of, you know, winging it to a certain extent, not so much planning. So I had the odd alarm bells. That wasn't the only reason for the alarm bells. The next reason for my alarm bells is she decides that, you know, that isn't tough enough for her. While she's there, she's going to actually train for another ultramarathon while she's there. Now, an ultramarathon, because I didn't know how long an ultramarathon was necessarily, although she's done them before, they're either 50 or they're 100 miles. Someone said in the comments she was doing an 100-mile one. I don't know if that's true. But it's certainly one or the other. So that, to me, was also another alarm bell, because then you've got somebody who is battling the elements, battling with equipment that isn't quite fit for the job, perhaps, very early on in the journey, having to use all of her resources, all of her might, all of her problems, you know, just... There's quite a lot going on. And then she's got to split her attention away from tackling some of these problems and doing more research and things like this to train for an ultramarathon, which in itself is quite grueling training. And if you're thinking of running in some of these extreme temperatures, you're going to need to make sure your calorie intake is sufficient and God knows what else. But it also adds to the problems, I would imagine as you encounter temperatures of minus 20 plus, or minus 20 down to say minus 30, you're probably going to find you have maybe even cognitive impairment. I don't know, because of the extreme cold. It might affect you in ways that perhaps you're not quite used to. I don't know. That's speculation. However, it felt more like torture at this point than enjoyable viewing, because for me, it was so far outside my comfort zone. The level of risk seemed to be far greater than it needed to be, and it seemed far greater with very little in the way of backup. And obviously, as she's driving along in the very early days, in the first couple of episodes, we're seeing her pass cars nose first in the ditch because they just skidded off the road, you know, because obviously those conditions are quite challenging to drive in as well. It also didn't help that right off the bat, right at the beginning of the journey, Eva was like, I've not driven in snow and ice before, so this is going to be a challenge. And I'm like, oh God, What are you trying to do to your viewers, Eva? We're not as tough as you are, you know. So that didn't help. And then she's there going, yeah, you know, and she's getting the hang of it, and that's great. But again, you can't probably underestimate the level of concentration it requires to drive for, say, 6, 7, 8 hours straight on snow and ice, sometimes encountering storms, you know, and especially if you've never driven in those conditions before. I'm sure after a while it will become muscle memory and it will become much easier for her. I don't know at what point that would click in, but certainly she's taken on what seems to be a heck of a challenge. Now, this is why I was like, it's not feeling it. I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't feeling it because it seemed to be a knee-jerk reaction to things that hadn't quite gone to plan. You know, I just spent a while watching her, becoming invested in her journey in America, going, hey, I'm going to hopefully buy a place in America. And then that just fell through. You know, allegedly there was a boyfriend and that didn't work out. And we don't know the reasons. She just said she couldn't afford a place in America for one reason and another. But that had been her dream. That had been a dream. So very sad to see that dream, for one reason and another, didn't come to fruition for Eva. I was just sad. But she'd been talking passionately in every episode, or most episodes, about how she really wanted to buy a place in America. She had a dream. It was a dream. Then the next best thing, I think, was Italy. Italy became the next dream. Italy had been on her mind too. She had friends who lived out there, and that had been a bit of a passion of hers as well. She didn't buy a place in Italy. Then she pops back, makes another video and says, hey, so I've bought a place. I think she bought a place in Poland. Well, fair play. Maybe it's near her family because she's got lovely family out in Poland. There'd be some logical sense there to spend some time with them since she's been on the road for so long. So I thought, great, well, she's going to put down roots now. She's been talking about this for a long time. So, hey, who knows? Maybe we'll see videos of a bit of a more settled Eva just for a time, just so she can settle down, maybe do a course or something, maybe do something within her community. But no, no sooner had she gone, yeah, I've got my own place and I'm just making shelves for it, she buggers off again. And off she goes and goes, yeah, I kick myself out my comfort zone again. And off she goes to the Arctic for this latest trek, this latest arduous, difficult struggle with what feels to me as an arduous, unnecessarily arduous struggle with very little reward, very little fun. It's all about the challenge, and it's all about the personal challenge. Now, it seems that some veterans enjoy watching Eva. You know, and again, that speaks to the level, the sheer grit, determination, and the level at which she operates in terms of the challenges she takes on. If veterans feel comfy and vicariously enjoy watching her because it reminds them of their army days, they say, oh yeah, we used to do stuff like that in the army, I had a great time. You'll do fine, you'll be absolutely fine. So to them, comfort level is fine. That's their comfort level, and they get the enjoyment out of it because it reminds them of when they were in the army. So to them, it's great viewing and it's enjoyable viewing, and they love seeing her challenge herself like this. To me, I don't, and we've all got our own personal tastes, and that's fine. As I say, sometimes I do enjoy people challenging themselves. Otherwise, I perhaps wouldn't have watched Eva all these years. There have been a few early hairy moments as well where she undertook a challenge and things didn't seem to be quite working out, and I thought, God, I hope she turns back. You know, and she did. And I think there was one point where I think she was running an ultramarathon up a mountain or something. She became ill and she really wanted to just keep going because she wanted the kudos of the ultramarathon. But luckily, I think a couple of people in the comments are like, oh, maybe at this stage you should just pull back, regroup, do something else. And luckily she did. And I say luckily because I think sometimes ego can kick in and you really want this challenge and you've got your passion and your ego and it means a lot to you. But also sometimes I think we can all buy into an image of who we might be. It can happen to anyone, in any sector, in any walk of life, at any point. But especially perhaps if you're in the public eye, if you're known for doing adventures or things like this, then people look up to you, they're rooting for you, and they're holding you in high regard. You're on a pedestal in some of their eyes. You're this fantastic explorer, the intrepid explorer. So you probably also feel like you can't let them down. You can't let down that image that they have of you, but also you've built that self-image so successfully into your own ego, it's become intertwined now with your own DNA. You can't probably see a way of decoupling from that on any level either. It's probably very, very difficult to go, you know what, this is actually a bit much now, I'm going to go and do something else, and trust that your viewers will still be there. With Eva's viewers, they'd still be there anyway. It's not a problem. I'll probably go back to watching her at some point. So for me, I just felt like this feels uncomfortable. It didn't feel comfortable. Some of what she does doesn't feel comfortable, but it doesn't necessarily feel unsafe either. When I watched Eva in the Antarctic, I didn't have that horrendous feeling in the pit of my stomach. I didn't feel like, oh, this isn't right. I was like, whew, this is hairy. It's hairy. She's taken on a heck of a challenge, but kudos to her. She's done well. She seems to really enjoy it. And she's doing really well. And there were other people around her. Of course, if anything went wrong medically, you can't get a helicopter or a plane or anyone out there fast. If you're in the middle of a storm in the Atlantic, you're on your own. But still, I didn't have that feeling of potential peril in quite the same way that I do on this trip. As I say, I'm just not feeling it. And by feeling it, I mean, to me, something just feels off. Perhaps it's her mental attitude over it. Perhaps it's the laissez-faire attitude she seemed to exhibit in those early videos. Oh, I've only got a few days to pack and get everything ready. It seemed there was no research, really, very little pre-planning. She chatted to one bloke about tyres, decided she was going to have studs. I believe it was studs. And that's something. But again, another video, and yeah, the last video I got to was about the third or the fourth video, and that was where she was, she tried a few park ups. One of them was full. One of them directed her to another park up, which she got to, and then she said, hi, have you got any room, anywhere to park up? Sorry, no room. And that was it. Now, you think in those conditions, in those circumstances, they'd have said, sorry, we don't. We'll make an exception for you because you're a woman travelling on your own and we like to look after people here. But we can suggest this campsite over here, or come and stay at my house. Do you know what I mean? There's a series of videos that I just watched one video. It's like this guy who decided to cycle across, I think he cycled either up through America and then back down, something like that. But he was headed, he put it all into one video, but I think he's also done a series of videos. And he was headed sort of up to Alaska, or certainly through Canada, on his bicycle, and then camping out and things like this. And then he met a girl en route who became his girlfriend. It was really very sweet and lovely. And then they went back to Mexico, I believe, or somewhere in South America where she was from, so they could meet her family, and she hadn't seen her family in some years. So that was a really nice series to watch. I wish I could remember their names, but I can't at the moment. So that was really nice. But what struck me as well about that was the hospitality and how lovely it was. No one let them camp. When they were in middle America and the temperatures weren't so bad, it was fine, and they were camping and that was all fine. But when it got colder, much colder, when they were up North America or Canada, everybody just said, hey, stopped and had a chat with them. Come and stay with us at ours tonight. And they put them up. So literally, they didn't have to worry about where to sleep, ever. Such was the level of hospitality, which was great. Now, I'm quite sure that people are very hospitable in Norway and Sweden as well. Maybe this young girl just didn't really think, or maybe, yeah, who knows the reason. but equally it wasn't great. And then Eva, eventually I think she got a cabin. I think she might have even been agonising as to whether or not to take the cabin. Oh, should I take the cabin? Does that make it a very authentic trip? Such is the hardcore nature of Eva Zu Beck. You know, most of us would be like, thank God there's a cabin, we'll take it, thank you. You know, not like, would the trip be quite as authentic, you know? Just have a hammock while you're at it, love. Sling it between two trees and just, you know, just sleep in your Antarctic sleeping bag while you're there. So yeah, if Eva Zu Beck reminds me of anyone, it would probably be Bear Grylls. I think she's like a female equivalent of Bear Grylls. And for those of you who don't know who Bear Grylls is, he's some sort of intrepid explorer dude who on one trip, I think even literally hollowed out a dead animal to sleep in the skin to get the warmth on some TV show or other. So yeah, a bit of context there for Bear Grylls. So again, the park-ups weren't really working. Heater problems. She's probably going to break down more than once, you know, that's a given. We hope that this will be okay, and obviously she won't break down in any awkward spots, and that it's a regular enough road that she's on that people will always be there, you know. And that's what concerns me with the running as well. You know, under normal circumstances, she does her ultramarathon training in all sorts of circumstances. But in this, obviously, because of the temperatures, if something goes wrong, things could go south quite quickly. And that is kind of my major concern, the lack of planning and the potential risks. So I wrote a couple of comments. So did a few other people. Eva responds the next week by saying, hey guys, just don't want the negativity this week if that's all right, you know. And there were a few people going, didn't really see any negativity. There might have been, maybe she deleted some, you know. But what we saw was just concern, genuine concern. I think she found it patronising, and she was like, I've done all these trips, I've done all this stuff, I've climbed some mountains, I've climbed the highest mountains in the Antarctic, I've done all these trips, da 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 da. So she found it patronising and annoying. Now, to me, that raises a slight flag in itself. Now, I don't know much about travelling to extreme places, climbing mountains or any of these things. But I imagine that you'd need to approach it with a sense of beginner's mind in every trip. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that you would want to be prepared, stay humble, no matter your past experience. You're only as good as your present trip. You're only as good as your latest amount of planning and your latest skill set that you're carrying at that time. Past trips, of course, help. They've created your fortitude. They've helped create create all sorts of levels of experience within you. They've helped create levels of adaptability within you, levels of strength, personal, physical, emotional, God knows what, for sure. But equally, you've got to approach every trip that's a bit extreme, like it could kill you, and you want to have perhaps maximum planning and backup for your backup. You want to have as much as you can in order that you stay alive. And also you want to communicate that to your audience a little bit. I'd also say, maybe she does on Patreon, as I say. But I would say you want to communicate that as much as possible to your audience on just YouTube as well, because an awful lot of people hero worship Eva and look up to her, and they might need to know the levels of planning required. So all of this is my preamble. 28 minutes in, that's my preamble. So I thought, what's she doing? What is she doing? Because I saw it looked grueling. It didn't look fun. I wasn't having fun as a viewer watching her doing all of this grueling stuff and being worried for her. It became just anxiety watching rather than an enjoyable, informative trip. I was just thinking, what the hell are you doing? Why would you punish yourself like this? Because it looked masochistic. So that got me thinking, what's driving Eva? You know, psychologically and all the rest of it. Is she well? Is she okay? Is she in her comfort zone? Is this just who she is? What's going on? You know, what is going on? So I thought, well, maybe her astro chart, her astrology chart and things like this might lend some, just a bit of, you know, shed a bit of light on it. So I thought I'd have a little look. And before I did, I thought, okay, if I had to guess Eva's element for Eastern astrology, I would have guessed metal. And I got that right. She's metal. But I got her animal wrong. So for Eastern astrology, there's 12 different animals. And I thought maybe she's a tiger, you know, because she's kind of like fierce and fearless and all of this. So I thought, I bet she's a tiger, maybe a dragon. I had no idea. But it turns out she's a goat. Apparently, she's a metal goat. Metal, I thought absolutely that would be her element. Why? Toughness. Seriously, metal people are tough. They can cope in extreme circumstances, or more extreme than the average sort of people. My element is wood. That's a bit more creative, a little bit softer. Don't want to go on an ultramarathon and running through snow and ice. Thank you very much. I'd just take the cab in and go home afterwards. That would do me. So yeah. So metal and a metal goat. Now, when I heard that, my first thoughts were, of course, why? Goats are very tenacious. If you've ever seen a mountain goat clinging to a tiny ledge, looking like it's going to fall off, for the most part they don't. They conduct their lives like this. They bounce around on these ledges very, very high up. It looks terrifying if you're afraid of heights. It looks horrific. But this is what they do. They're in their element. They're literally doing what they're meant to do. And they're loving it. So I thought, okay, we've got a bit of a tenacious goat here. That kind of explains some of this. I'm starting to get a picture now as to who Eva is and what's driving all this. And then I thought I'd have a quick look at her chart. And you can just Google her. As I say, I'm not an astrologer. I have a very rudimentary idea about astrology. But if you Google Eva Zu Beck, astrological chart, you know, a couple of other people have just cobbled together a chart for her. Now, if you know anything about astrology, you'll know that to get a really in-depth reading, you will need the date and time and place of birth. Without the time of birth, it can vary quite wildly. So you can get a general picture and an overview, but you're not necessarily going to get the absolute lowdown on a human being. So it's really worth bearing that in mind. And if you're watching this and you're not really down with astrology at all, I should have really said at the beginning, this video probably isn't for you at all. But I would say, if you've got any curiosity, just plug your details in and, you know, you can pay, I don't know, maybe a tenner. You can get your birth chart for free online now. It's very easy. You can pay, you know, very little money perhaps to have a very basic reading done for you. Obviously with astrology, it's a lot more than just sun sign. When you see, what you see in the newspapers is not proper astrology, not even close. Astrologers allegedly in the UK aren't even allowed to go in depth. They're not allowed. They're only allowed to do the lightest, fluffiest, entertainment purposes only thing. And that's been the case for many years, puzzlingly. So you get an overview of an astro reading in a newspaper and it's bullshit. It's not going to apply to every single human being born under that sun sign. So if I had to sum up what astrology is all about then, I would say it's like winds. I read a book once that described it thus, and I thought that kind of makes sense. Astrology it's all about the planets, their positions, the asteroids, planets, orbits. The positions of all these things in your birth chart really do determine some of your greatest weaknesses, strengths, challenges. And when you get a chart drawn up for the year, you're going to see some very heavily aspected. And they're going to be likely the things that cause you the biggest joys or headaches, challenges, things like this. And then you're going to find some that are a bit weaker, you know? So it's like you're on a yacht and there are winds coming in. Some are going to be very strong and you're going to get buffeted around by those. It's definitely going to have an impact. And then others, just a mild breeze, you might not even feel the influence at all. And so within an astro chart then, you have all of these different elements and they all help make up who you are. And to anyone who's a bit sceptical and who says, yeah, but you can make it read like it could apply to anyone, I would say get your own chart done. Get your own chart done. Because to me, it helps excavate parts of your personality in a psychological way. It can really help sometimes illuminate areas you might have been struggling with or just coping with or dealing with for many years. Finding where your Chiron is in your chart, one of the moons of Uranus or something like that. Is it Chiron? Black moon Lilith is something some people talk about. Black moon Lilith is it's not even an astrological body. Black moon Lilith is, I think, the sort of furthest part of the orbit of the moon from the earth, something like that. And that highlights an area of weakness. That's like a part of the shadow side that you might find a challenge in your chart. And again, that's something you can Google really easily. So some of these are really intriguing and interesting. So for Eva then, allegedly, and of course I have to say allegedly, because we've got these, as I say, someone else has cobbled this together on, I've got it on astrotheme.com. You know, a new approach to astrology, it says. Well, I haven't got a clue about this site, really. I can't verify it or not. And on here, it's kind of interesting. Her sun sign is Taurus. Now, when we think of Taurus, we think of someone solid, dependable. Women would be very, potentially very, feminine. But also practical. It's an earth sign. So you think very practical, dependable, solid, tenacious. So we're getting, again, a little bit of this tenacity. Her moon's in Libra. Well, that's the sign of balance. That's the scales. So that could mean perhaps she has issues with indecision sometimes. I don't know. Now, the dominant aspects in her chart are Taurus, the sun, Libra, the moon, Capricorn, Pluto, Uranus, Venus. Now, that's kind of interesting that the big ones are Capricorn, Pluto and Uranus there as well. Now, Venus, obviously all about love and, you know, not just love, but I think aesthetics and things like that. Things must be aesthetically pleasing and harmonious, you know. But I'm thinking Capricorn, hello tenacity, hello mountain goat, echoes of the, the Eastern astrology goat there. You know, Capricorns can be incredibly stubborn, incredibly tenacious, you know. Now, Pluto is interesting. Pluto is death and rebirth. Pluto is the big, heavy sign. Now, when I think of Pluto, I don't know if anyone watching has seen a video called High Ren. It's a music video by a guy called Ren and it's insanely good. Very dark themes that he addresses through his own personal struggle with illness that has lasted many years, and that took him to the depths of despair. And then from there we see this rebirth, the phoenix rising from the ashes to create something immensely beautiful and powerful from this despair, from, you know, it's literally alchemy. I would say Pluto is an alchemizing sign. You're going deep, you're going down, you're going dark, but you're coming up with something utterly astonishing as a result. So I didn't know what I'd expect to see in her chart, but seeing Pluto there, I thought that makes a hell of a lot of sense now. When I think about her current trip, what she's putting herself through in order to continue to challenge herself. Uranus is the next one, which absolutely highlights and accentuates what's going on here a little bit as well. because Uranus is the planet, it's going to cause sudden changes in plan, complete 180s perhaps. Uranus, it doesn't like stability of the Taurus. Taurians love stability, as a rule. Uranus, no, sod all that, throw it all up in the air. Uranus does not want a little settled life in suburbia for the rest of your days. That is not what Uranus wants. Uranus wants the excitement, the adrenaline, the sudden change, all of that. So I thought, okay, that makes a heck of a lot of sense now. Now we're really getting a sense of this stuff, this trip is now hardwired into her DNA. And what I'm getting is that she needs this, like this is as necessary as air to breathe to Eva, this kind of challenge, where it looks risky, it looks precarious, but she will emerge stronger for it. There are risks. You don't want to downplay the risks. But to her, she's a very, very capable human being. And I feel like this is a journey she's on, really excavating parts of who Eva Zu Beck is. I feel like this journey is necessary and, yeah, as I say, encoded into her DNA. And that would explain the trip, sudden change of plans from America to Italy, to Poland, to throw all that up in the air again. Okay, she's still got a home base, and I'm glad she's got a home base. I think everyone needs a home base. But now she's off again on another journey, on another trip, because she thrives. She thrives in these sort of circumstances. She needs the adrenaline. She needs the excitement. This is absolutely lifeblood. This is what she needs to do. So I thought, okay, I'm starting to feel a little bit better now, just a little bit better about what it is she's doing. I think I needed to do this birth chart as much for me, have a little look at it as for anything else, because as I say, I felt quite alarmed at her latest trip, and I didn't want to be a negative Nancy. I didn't want to be pouring cold water over everything. I did put in a couple of comments to just say, Eva, what are you doing? Because I honestly thought, what on earth are you doing? So, and her life path number as well is a 5. And if you know anything about life path numbers, you'll know that, yeah, that all comes into play as well. Very much. Your life path number determines who you're going to be as you go through life. And another thing to think about with some elements of psychology in astrology, some astrological traits lie dormant for years and only come into play in quite sharp focus during a particular time of your life, or during later years, or God knows what else. It can be a real journey of discovery. I mean, we all have the journey that we're on. Some people call it the hero's journey with Joseph Campbell. They would just say that we're all on a particular type of journey. For any Jungian studiers out there, for any people who like Carl Jung, the psychoanalyst, they'd know about what he says, which when he talks about the sort of hero's journey type of thing, he calls it individuation. And an individual, when you're on a journey of individuation, you're basically discovering who you are. And when he talked about it, as far as I'm aware, he meant really this is something that emerges, although you're on a journey all your life, but really this is something that emerges in your middle years, in your 40s, when you're coming up for your midlife crisis. Because it's then that you go deep, you're doing a bit of excavating work, you're trying to work out who you are, you're trying to work out what you're doing in life, and it's quite harsh because suddenly you see, gosh, I haven't got long left, I've just been going through this sort of thing as well, trying to figure it all out. And then suddenly you have some big psychological shifts happen in your 40s, I think. Life stops being quite so personal and becomes more transpersonal. That is to say, it's less about the ego. It's less just about pleasing self, and it becomes more about looking after others and widening that net as well. Now, we've seen with Eva, her journey at the moment is very much self-exploration. She is finding out who she is, and testing herself and challenging herself. And it might be that when she comes to her middle years, which isn't going to be for a while yet, that she might want to expand that out, maybe think about teaching or how she can sort of rejoin the community one way or another, because her journeys are very solo affairs now. She went through a phase where she was going and visiting tribes people, say in Afghanistan and things like this. And I loved watching those videos, you know, the connection with these remote tribes and what she was learning about these people and things like this. But then after that, once she bought Odyssey, it became very much a personal Odyssey, very much a personal trip. Pluto influenced perhaps. You know, who is Eva? What's she capable of? What can she do? Who is she? And I think she's proving to herself and to us she's stronger than most people. She is not somebody to be trifled with. She's a very strong lady. Interestingly, it looks like she can also be quite sensitive. That could be the moon in Libra. But it sounds like quite an interesting potential here. And I have to say potential because, again, we don't have her time of birth. But it sounds like she's, on the one hand, she's quite sensitive and emotional, you know, but on the other hand, she's tough as old boots. And, you know, you could pop her in the Arctic for a few weeks, leave her to it with a compass and her puppy. She'll be fine. She'll just come and meet you in a cafe afterwards and go, hi. You know, it's fine. And just have, yeah, a bit of a trek. Few 100 miles, it's nothing. Puffed, I ran it backwards, carrying, you know, a 500 kilo bag or something ludicrous, carrying a fridge on my back. I don't know, something mental. It's bonkers, truly, it's bonkers, but it's also kind of brilliant. And it's that brilliance and that bonkersness, that precariousness, which, you know, perhaps doesn't always make easy viewing. For some people like myself, I'm not talking about anybody else here. I'm sure most people watching this video go, "Puh, she can cope. You're clearly a wimp sitting at home." It's true. You know, I'm not a physical type of person in that regard at all. But as I say, I do really, really admire her. So this video was never meant to be disrespectful. It was just a little look at who she is and things like this. Okay, she's got Mercury in Aries. Haha, lol. Mercury in Aries, I'm just reading a bit about that. You do not pay attention to details and you prefer to go to the essentials. Yeah, so it could be that the perceived lack of planning that I've picked up on, it could be that was kind of a little bit haphazard, and it could be that what she lacks in serious attention to detail, in some instances, let's just add that as a caveat as well, it might be that what she lacks there, she more than makes up for in adaptability with the Uranus and the sheer mettle, the sheer grit, the sheer determination, the mind-blowing levels of sheer grit and determination. And that's what I'm doing this video about. I don't normally make videos about other people. It's very rare that I do. Well, usually I'm having a little criticizing somebody, you know, or just trying to look at what's going on in quite a balanced way, really, usually. But this really came to my attention because I was just really thinking about what is driving her. It's insane. And truly, I think one day her name could go down in record books. You know, I don't want this to go to her head because she needs to just keep all of her attention on her trip and look after herself and her beautiful puppy Vilk. But I do think, you know, one day, if she wanted to, she could break a Guinness World Record, or she could have her name up there with some serious adventurers or mountaineering types or that sort of thing, if she wanted to. You know, I think that there'd be no problem there. Such is the level of grit and determination. I'm surprised, actually, that she didn't do a spell in the army or in the military in some regard, because I think she could have run rings around an awful lot of other people. Now, when I think about joining the army or something like that, the film that comes to mind a very politically incorrect film, I guess. An old one from the 80s that some of you might be old enough to remember is Private Benjamin with Goldie Hawn. And Goldie Hawn is sort of face down in the mud. It's hell for her. But she comes through it. She does really well. Well, I feel like if I were to do anything like Eva is doing, I would be face down in the mud. But there would be no beautiful comeback. There would be no beautiful triumphant moment. I would just be limping off into the sunset, you know. So as I say, I do have absolute top respect to Eva. I was just trying to work out what was going on a little bit with her. Yeah. Just having a little look at what else is going on. So we've got peace, joy of life and sensuality are essential to you. That's the sun in Taurus. And again, as I say, your sun sign is offset by all of these other, effects, planetary effects going on around you. So some people might be fully Taurus, you might absolutely see it in them, and then other people, they can have some elements of it, sure, but they're driven by something else. It isn't just sun sign stuff that they're being driven by here, you know. But certainly, you know, they say some of these things, certainly loyal, steadfast, strong, patient, enduring, persistent, realistic, constructive, tenacious. All of these things are absolutely, I would think of applying to Eva, no problem, you know, with a strong need for security, which kind of interesting, isn't it? Because again, that's wildly offset by the Uranus aspect, potentially. But it does also say you may also be stubborn, rigid, possessive, materialistic, static and slow. Well, I think we can say the jury's really out on most of that, you know. Let's have a look. What else is going on? Mars in Cancer. Okay, let's have a little look. Changeable moods. Possibly that's going to mean some levels of emotion and things like that going on. Okay, it's kind of interesting because that highlights security, because Cancer is really about security. But again, you know, maybe that's why perhaps she's been so driven to find a home, and maybe the conflicts with Uranus and all the rest of it is, you know, why she's off again. So let's just have a look what else is going on. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of cool. It says here, with Pluto as a dominant planet in your chart, you are a magnetic and mighty predator, like the Scorpio sign ruled by this planet, who needs to exert pressure on others in order to test them. I feel like she's testing us, the viewers, at some stage. And like I say, that's just me and maybe a few other people. But for the most part, like I say, especially veterans, they're well in their comfort zone watching her. No problems at all. But there we are. And here we go. It says you're always ready to evolve, to risk destruction for reconstruction, including your own, to live more intensely whilst imposing your secret authority on things and on people you encounter. Wow. Yeah. To risk destruction for reconstruction, including your own, to live more intensely. I think that says an awful lot here. Yeah. Goodness me. It says some other crazy things here as well, which I'm not even gonna, voice. But let's have a look. Uranus, independence, freedom, originality, even rebelliousness and marginality when things go wrong. Interesting. Yeah, I think this is true as well. Uranus is Mercury's higher octave, and as such he borrows some of its traits of character, namely a tendency to intellectualise situations and emotions with effective detachment, or at least jagged effectivity. That's kind of cool. So it says here, you're certainly a passionate woman who is on the lookout for any kind of action or revolutionary idea, and you're keen on new things, that novelty that I would think of associated with Uranus as well. Uranians are never predictable, and it is especially when they are believed to be stable and well settled that they change everything, their life, their partner and job. Yeah. In fact, you're allergic to any kind of routine, although avoiding it must give way to many risks. Interesting. Got a strong artistic side as well. That's really cool. Pleasure, beauty, and sensuality. It does say here, sometimes to the detriment of efficiency, durability, logic, and detachment. But I don't think that's true. Certainly, she's got a hell of a good pragmatism and staying power and grit, you know, in all of these crazy undertakings. So what else is going on? Let's just have a little look. Birth path number is 5. So the life path for 5, let's have a look, which indicates changing and off the beaten track destinies. Well, absolutely, never a truer word was spoken there, you know. Your activities are varied and placed under the sign of adaptability and multiplication of resources. More than anything else, you need to enhance your learning capacities and broad-mindedness. You must cope as well as you can with changes and transformation occurring in your life. Indeed, Life Path 5 brings about destinies which are prone to twists and turns as well as upheavals. Therefore, your life's main orientation may vary considerably at certain stages, and if your destiny is that of adventurers whose course is fraught with obstacles, it may also turn you into an exceedingly unstable person through lack of nuance. Well, I don't think that's true in this instance. You accumulate experiences and enrich your know-how with each crucial period. Your adaptation skills enable you to go through all these successes stage of your life without ever being destabilised by new situations. Very cool. So let's have a quick look at the goat and the element of metal as well. So the goat, okay, so we've got peaceful and sensitive nature. To beauty and aestheticism. You're enthusiastic and you strive to give your life a playful, refined and cosy dimension. Let's have a look. I forgot to silence my phone before I started this. It says, thus insouciance is found among your flaws. I'm not too sure what that means. However, it does say practical constraints are of no concern to you. I would say there's perhaps an element of that. I would say, and maybe it's probably both a blessing and a curse, right? Because I guess if you looked at every risk, if you did a risk assessment on a trip like this with a car like her car, it's entirely possible that many people wouldn't do it. They'd either change the vehicle, perhaps ditch the idea of the roof tent and just sleep inside it, make other modifications, things like this. But I guess equally there can be a time when you overkill, you have overkill on a risk assessment and then you don't go anywhere. So you've got to have a balance at some point, you know. It says you can have a comfortable life, but you must choose to surround yourself with persons who are endowed with a sense of reality which you are lacking. Well, again, I can't speak to that. I can only say that this particular trip, normally I think she's very practical. She's very grounded. She's very down to earth. She does her research. Sometimes, you know, I'm thinking of the trip now where she had a little, what was it, maybe 4 or 5 horses, and she took them somewhere. I can't remember where she was now, whether it was in North America or South America, you know, across a considerable distance. And I remember watching that one and going, again, too much can go wrong. She's on her own here with very little backup, very little to help her if something goes wrong. And again, I was slightly uncomfortable watching that. That felt like a personal challenge. Some personal challenges are so personal that it can perhaps be a bit discomforting or uncomforting or disquieting for the viewer, maybe, because it's such a level of risk. It's clearly a personal journey that this person is on. It's the sort of peeping through your fingers moment on the TV where you'd really rather watch the whole thing retrospectively. I think I did watch it retrospectively, so I knew she came out the other side, I knew she was all right. But as a viewer, you kind of want that assurance as well. Especially, you know, I like Eva as a human being. I think she's great. And you want the best for them, right? You don't want anything bad to happen. I understand she's on some sort of depth charge drive here. You know, the depth charge is coming from Pluto. She's on some sort of deep journey. You know, Pluto makes me think of the underworld and all of that as well. But at the same time, you can't perhaps reasonably expect to take every one of your viewers along with you happily on something that may come across a tiny bit, teeny bit extreme to some people. And it says, as a matter of rule, you loathe tedious works, repetitive tasks and daily chores. You react and see, does she? If she does it very, very well, because obviously you have to be incredibly disciplined. That's another thing that she has in spades. She's got great self-discipline. You know, one thing I've learned, if you want to get a van, you want to live in a van or you want to live in a Landrover, half your life will be spent taking everything out of your Landrover, organising it and putting it back in again. And you'll be doing that dozens and dozens of times. And you'll be changing everything that you have for every trip, probably checking and rechecking what you've got and just tidying, just to keep things tidy as well. So there's a level of discipline there. So I'd say, however much she might loathe it, if she does loathe it, it doesn't come across. I don't know that she has any feelings towards it. She does it very easily, very thoroughly, and very methodically. But it says here, you react to monotony with charm and fantasy. But bearing in mind, this is the goat, metal goat. You know, this aspect is again, has its nuances, and again, due to the Western astrological chart and things like that as well, perhaps. Yeah, this is quite hilarious because it says there is an indisputable laziness to you. Well, I'd say if that's true, either it's so well managed and buried that we never see it, or that line is nonsensical in the chart of Eva. And I would say again, you know, again, this is a very general, it feels like a very general reading. You look at her astro chart, the Western one, and you look at what she's doing, and there's nothing lazy about what she's doing. It's the absolute diametrical opposite of, you know, what she is doing to laziness. So there we are. So that is probably all I'll take from this for now. And we've just gone over an hour on this. So yeah, so to sort of conclude then, I guess I wanted to take a little look at what drives her, because I'm kind of interested as well as to what drives highly driven people, what their motivations are, you know, what on earth is going on here, what drives them to be the extraordinary people that they are. Because as I say, there is no doubt at all that she's a very extraordinary, very accomplished lady. So yeah, it's just interesting. It's interesting psychologically. Knowing what I know now, I feel more like this isn't a breakdown. This isn't just like a response to a bad breakup, an ill-judged thing. However, I still feel that lack of planning. I still feel if there wasn't a lack of planning, it was certainly put across in a particular way as though there was very little planning. I still feel like there could have been a bit of better prep going on here, because you don't want to monkey around in these temperatures. As far as being patronising goes, personally, I'd have said these comments to anyone. I'd have said them about anyone. I don't care how famous an explorer you are. If you wind up dead on Mount Everest, maybe that was your destiny with Mount Everest, and maybe you were meant to be there, but some poor bastard's still got to come and pick you up and take you off the mountain and tell your family and all of that. And I struggle to, you know, when it comes to that sort of thing, I'm still going to say, wow, that person was a silly bastard, weren't they? You know, and it could be that they were the most famous, incredible explorer in the world. And of course, I have to add the caveat that without people like Eva, without people like the mad bastards who die on Everest, I suppose humanity perhaps wouldn't have taken as many quantum leaps as it has as well. We need some people to be extraordinary, to rise above, and to do the things that would make most of us mere mortals shudder in horror and recoil from the challenge. It takes all sorts to make up the world, you know, it takes all sorts of people. It would be a very boring world if we were all the same. It takes everybody. We've all got our foibles. I sound like I'm saying furballs. We've all got our foibles. I can't even say it now. Foibles. We've all got our, you know, our Achilles heels. We've all got the traits we wish we didn't have. We've all got and we've all got some really great traits as well. We've all got innate creativity that often can be quite repressed because, you know, the society we live in and all the rest of it. Very often people are just trying to survive and just get through and just get by, and they're not always able to do the things that they love doing. So Eva is clearly a really extraordinary chick, and yeah, that was why I wanted to make the video, just to say, hey, you know, hats off to her, kudos to her. Could she still have prepped a little bit better? Well, maybe. I don't know. To me, it looked uncomfy. I wasn't comfy watching it. And as I say, just that sheer craziness of wanting to train for an ultramarathon in such, you know, dire temperatures. Obviously, if you're living out in Norway and Sweden and you want to train for a marathon or something, well, you've got to train for a marathon. Maybe in those conditions. So maybe this is normal. And certainly on her videos, there were some Norwegians going, hey, well, I live out here. And Swedes going, well, we live in these conditions. It's normal. You know, this is our daily commute to work. It's fine. What she's doing is absolutely normal. But of course, if you lived out there, it would feel normal to you. Equally, I live in the UK. Here we get a light dusting of snow and our newspapers report snow bomb, you know, which is kind of hilarious when you see what's going on in Norway and Sweden and you see maybe 20 feet of snow and you go, yeah, we've just had a snow bomb, haven't we? You know, but we are just not acclimatised. We are not acclimatised for this sort of craziness here in the UK. So Eva, if you're watching this, you know, I can only apologise for my comments, but I'm hoping that this adds a little bit of context. And if you're watching this and you're uncomfy with this video, just let me know and I'll take it down. Because, you know, I'm not here to offend anybody. I just wanted to go, why? Why is she doing this? And what is driving her, potentially? And I feel like, having had a tiny, tiny, tiny peek at her chart, that it's hardwired into her DNA that this is a journey she's on. There's the little journey of her going on the Arctic, which is by no means little. And then there's the bigger overall journey, which is all of her journeys being undertaken over the last few years and who she's becoming as a result and what's going on as a result. And every time she undertakes a journey like this, I feel like she is, you know, she's, as I say, it's like diving to the depths. She's diving to the depths to find out who Eva is. And she's doing it because it's necessary. And for most of us, that would not be a necessary journey. But for someone with Eva, I believe it is. So I believe that's kind of what's going on here. I think it can leave maybe audience members like me a bit rattled. And that's okay too. By the way, it's okay. You know, as I say, there's kind of limits to what we can feel comfortable enduring and watching. And I don't want to watch anybody put themselves through difficulty. I also imagine, you know, if there isn't an update one week, and that would be the worry that we just don't hear. Now, I like to think that if that's the case, all her followers, some who live out there, some who don't, I think people would alert the authorities pretty quickly. And I think some might even drive that route that she's on or nip up there if they're close by or something. You know, I like to think that there is also help in that regard too. But equally, that would be a very sorry day, and it's not, you know, that isn't something I'm wanting to see, obviously. So it might be that I come back and I maybe look at this series again retrospectively if I want to. Otherwise, I might just move on to the next thing. If she does something quite nice, you know, I might watch that. But it isn't down to me. It's her life, her journey, and she's taking a hell of a lot of people with her, regardless of me. She's taking at least 1 million people and beyond, I'm sure, who will continue to absolutely watch her in a very loyal way. So she doesn't need to worry about that. And also, I imagine there's probably all sorts of being pulled in different directions when you make YouTube videos, because you're going to get people who love what you do one day and people who don't the next. People go, oh, I loved it when you did that video a few years ago, you know. And I'm being that woman right now. I'm going, oh, I liked it when she did the tribes people videos. That was really nice. Now I'm not liking it so much, but it ain't up to me. And I know this. It's not up to me. It's not up to me. It's her, and it's her journey. And of course, it's really important that she listen to her own inner voice. Providing she does listen to other people too, who are talking sense. You know, when it comes to some of the people on there, some of the advice has been golden. People who can give her some advice regarding the engine, how to heat the van in a secondary way, or God knows what, how to fix the windscreen crack. There's just been all sorts of really good, useful, practical advice, and I'm hoping she pays lots of attention to that as well. Because when you do a trip like that, when you think about it, you know, in the old days, people went out exploring or whatever, you know, and they'd take a team with them. There would be lots of camels or something. I'm thinking of a different country, obviously. But you know what I mean. There would be people, there would be backup. You think about the Gurkhas who help people in the Himalayas, and who do it a hell of a lot better than most Brits because they're kind of really acclimatized for it. They can just handle it, you know. My God. Am I thinking of the Gurkhas? I'm thinking of the... I think I'm thinking of the Sherpas, not the Gurkhas. It's a whole different story. They're really tough too. But yes, I'm thinking of a whole different bunch of people. But the people they take with them are tough. Absolutely attuned to this type of thing. There would, in other words, there's a sodding crew. Okay, there is a crew, and like with the True Blue Travellers, John and Jess, you know, I don't want to say she's the brains and he's the brawn, because he's very clever too. He kitted out the van by himself. She helped him with some things, but when it comes to the electrics, he's got his head screwed on. I don't know if he was an engineer in a previous incarnation before they became travellers, but certainly he's very comfy talking about tools and all of the rest of it, and he knows what he's doing. So they're both the brains of the operation, but Jess would do the research, you know, where to go and all the rest of it. So they didn't have, obviously, the problems that Eva has at the moment with regards park-ups and things like this. There just weren't the problems because there were two of them. So, but Eva's doing what she feels she needs to do. Where that leads her, we don't know. Obviously, I can only just wish her absolutely all the best for her journey and hope that she is as safe as possible, and that she and her dog Vilk lead very long, happy lives together. And, you know, it will be interesting to see who she is in another 5 years, and then another 5 years, and so on and so forth, because she's very young yet. I think she's only, you know, in her early 30s. So, you know, she's got a hell of a lot going for her yet. To have achieved so much in such a short time is extraordinary, as I say. Hats off to her. But yeah, it's a bit like watching, there's a film coming out, if it isn't out already, about the lady, I want to say Ellen MacArthur, but I can't remember her name. It might be Ellen MacArthur, who sailed around the world solo. And her trip was quite possibly completely harrowing in places. Now, will I watch the film of that? I might watch the film of that. Would I have watched her do live updates once a week about her trip? No, I probably wouldn't, for the whole anxiety-inducing reasons I've said, because she might wind up dead 1 week and it feels too near the knuckle. It's a bit too much For me as a viewer, it's a bit too much. So that's my reasons. I hope those reasons seem reasonable to most people, but you can't please everyone all of the time. But that's why I also wanted to say, hey, she's a really cool chick, fabulous chick. I just don't want to watch anything too uncomfortable. You know, this feels like a deeply personal journey that she's on. And as I say, one that's, you know, if I were a veteran, if I'd have had a spell in the army, in the military, then it's entirely possible I'd have gone, oh yeah, she's fine. She's going to be absolutely fine, no problem at all. But I haven't, and that is not the feeling that I got from those first few videos at all. I got a feeling, it felt too uncomfy, too much risk, too little comfort. I was like, oh, not feeling it, Eva. Sorry. So as I say, I might come back to this one retrospectively. I'll no doubt watch her again in some other incarnation doing something else. I don't mean after she's passed on and she's in another lifetime. I mean, you know, when she comes back from this trip and she digs out Odyssey again for something else, or she does something completely different. You know, she's certainly clearly not done adventuring yet. And I'll be interested to know, you know, what her next trips become and what sort of things she does. But I feel like there's so much potential for her to really branch out and do different things. I think she's done spells, reporting, but you know, being a TV presenter and things like this. And I feel like if she wanted to, she could probably go back into, you know, anything like that really. I think the world really is her oyster at the moment. And she might want to think about a focused trip where she does break a Guinness World Record or something, not in a horrific, harrowing way. Let's hope not. But you know what I mean? I feel like there really is scope now. She's proved her worth. She's proved it. But the question is, has she proven it enough for herself, for the journey that she's on? Or does she need to still keep doing this? Is this literally, as I say, like oxygen for her, these trips? You know, will there ever come a point where she goes, yeah, I'm all right now. I'm just going to go and, you know, go and live in my cabin now and just make videos baking cakes. I don't see it, do you? It might happen. It could happen. You know, the Uranus, the unpredictability, who knows? But I think whatever she's doing, there's going to be adventure, and travel is going to be pretty big on the agenda. So I've rattled on long enough. So these are my thoughts. I'd be interested if anybody is a serious astrologer, a proper astrologer, what your thoughts are regarding her, you know, her birth chart or what have you. And I'd be interested in other people's views as well. Obviously, as I say, I wanted to keep this light. I wanted to keep this polite. I wanted to keep this respectful because I really do have heaps of respect for her. So hopefully this video is fine and, you know, hasn't offended anybody. But I'll keep an eye on the comments. And obviously if anyone's like, oh my God, how could you say such things? Then I might consider just deleting the video. Yeah. Because I'm not looking for that either. I'm not looking for any aggravation at all. And obviously, if you're Eva and you're watching this and it's annoyed you, I'll delete it for the same reason. No problems there. So hopefully it hasn't offended anyone. So yeah, that's me. Be interested in other people's thoughts. And I'd be interested too if anybody is an astrologer and if anybody knows, you know, if anybody wants to do any charts on any other famous adventuring types as well, because again I'd just be interested to see you know, the driving factors, what makes people, what turns people from living a relatively ordinary existence to going towards the extraordinary. What is the, you know, the primary driving force and all the rest of it. It's kind of, you know, very, very interesting to me to think about these sort of things from the safety of being indoors, not in minus 30 degrees. But that's me. So yes, Eva, whatever you do next in life, I wish you all the very best in life. I wish you all the very best in life. You and Vilk, your glorious puppy. Be safe, be well, be careful. It would be nice to think that she might have some people in her life that are very grounded, very practical, that she does take advice from. And I hope she does. But yes, be safe, be well, be careful, and just be you, you know, which you're going to do anyway, which is great. Just can't take all of us with you all of the time. And I hope you now kind of understand why. maybe from my own perspective. So yeah, take care. God bless all of you. And yeah, if you've stayed with me now, please do leave a like and a comment below, providing it's respectful, like I say. So take care. God bless. Good night.